Anyone confused about why Mary Madelson wants to remove Tom Massey from Congress, given that she's a one-issue person and that issue is Israel? That's what is going on here. I mean, the idea that we shouldn't go bomb Iran for Israel seems like pretty America first to me, as I've always understood it. Advocates, it's that he's fallen out of favor with Trump and his followers, his blindest followers, because Trump deviated from that America first policy while Thomas Massey stayed there.
Well, unless your head's under a rock, you know that there's a civil war brewing within MAGA, a schism of sorts that separated non-interventionists like Rand Paul and Thomas Massey from Donald Trump. And in this clip, Glenn gets into what's at the heart of that and why some of it involves, coincidentally, I'm sure, our greatest ally in the Middle East. So let's get to the bottom of it. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Thomas Massey has been a target of Trump for even longer than Rand Paul has. The first time he ever attacked him, at least in this presidency, was back in March. So barely, not even 2 months after Trump got inaugurated, he went on to Truth Social and he said this, using those scare quotes again, Congressman, as though he's not really a congressman, he's something else. Congressman Thomas Massey voted to delay the debt ceiling bill from the Biden administration to the Trump administration without getting anything for this horrendously stupid move. When Republicans could have gotten everything they wanted, he additionally voted to delay the current budget disaster from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. I was running for office at the time, doing my thing, and when I heard about this, it was quite simply hard to believe, a catastrophic mistake. Now, on virtually on every other issue, he's a very simple no. He can't even approve a continuing resolution when he approved that many times during his career as a congressman. Tom Massey is a grandstander in all caps. And the great people of Kentucky are going to be watching a very interesting primary in the not too distant future, clearly threatening Thomas Massey with a primary challenge. And again, continuing resolutions are the ones that just say, you know what, just keep the government going until we figure things out, just keep spending where it is. This is something Republicans hated when Democrats controlled the Congress. They thought continuing resolutions were awful because they just kept government spending at the level they were at. So of course, someone like Tom Massey, who's a hawk on deficit spending and the debt, and Rand Paul are going to oppose anything that keeps Washington spending at its current trajectory.
This is exactly right, and if you remember, Massey's argument for this was this is Biden-era spending that had been determined and budgeted for Biden's programs, funding Ukraine, and all sorts of absurd programs, including USAID, an agency that DOJ kind of dismantled for the most part. Some of those employees were rolled into the State Department under Rubio, but largely USAID was dismantled. I think that's maybe the best thing Trump's done in this term, by the way. If you never think I give him credit no matter what. But Massey was saying, well, this funds USAID, so why are we funding some of the programs you're cutting? And it adds, you know, billions of dollars of debt to the national debt, which is now over 38 trillion. It was 37 trillion there. But this is the argument he used, and for this he was called a grandstander. Well, no, he was standing on principles, the America First principles that you, Trump, campaigned on. And he has the gall to call you out when you have deviated. It's not Massey. It's not Massey who always wants to cut government spending. He doesn't vote for additional spending regardless if it's Trump or Biden, despite all the times they say, oh, he's just voting with the Democrats. No, he votes on principles. He's one of the only people in Washington who does. That's why he's in the crosshairs of the Trump regime.
The idea that that gets you kicked out of the conservative movement is bizarre. But what Thomas Massey really does is oppose Trump's foreign policy, especially when it comes to Israel, something that has become very sacred to Donald Trump. In June, Thomas Massey went on Tucker Carlson's program. He's been on our program many times as well, talking about these similar things. And he said something that was quite remarkable for a member of Congress to report and admit regarding Israel. And it had a lot of repercussions. And here's what he said.
Everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What's that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC. They're probably a constituent in your district, but they are firmly embedded in AIPAC. And
every member has something like this?
That's how it works on the Republican side. And when they come to D.C., you go have lunch with them. And they've got your cell number, and you have conversations with them.
That's absolutely crazy.
I've had 4 members of Congress say, I'll talk to my AIPAC person. And it's literally what we call them, my AIPAC guy. I'll talk to my AIPAC guy and see if I can get him to dial those ads back.
Why have I never heard this before?
Why would they want to tell their constituents that they've basically got a buddy system with somebody who's representing a foreign country? It doesn't benefit the congressman for people to know that, so they're not going to tell you that.
That's what made him persona non grata, even more than being conservative in the best sense when it comes to government spending. It is calling out the Israel First mentality and the Israel lobby in general and its massive disproportionate influence over our congressmen. And look, Trump and his ilks, the Israel Firsters in his cabinet, like Marco Rubio and John Ratcliffe, they adhere to the Israel First mantra as if it's some sacramental religious tenet from which you can never deviate. So when Thomas Massie is calling this out, this made him persona non grata right away.
I guess you can argue, oh no, it's just a massive coincidence that the Republican Donald Trump and his extremely fanatically pro-Israel billionaire donors have decided to target for destruction and remove from Congress just so happens to be the person who has been saying things like this about Israel for quite a while now.
And it's not just him. This is why it's not coincidental. I love Glenn's delivery on this, but they're doing the same when it comes to Marjorie Taylor Greene. AIPAC's going to throw hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars at that race as well. I say good luck to him. Massie overcame a 400,000, dollar crusade from the Israel lobby against his seat last time. I think he's going to win again. He's immensely popular in his district. I'm jealous of his district for being able to be represented by an actual statesman rather than an Israel First military industrial complex, big tech, big pharma shill, that's for sure.
Just a few days before Donald Trump bombed Iran with Israel and for Israel, Massie went on to X, this was June 16th, and said this, quote, "This is not our war. But even if it were, Congress must decide such matters. According to our Constitution, I'm introducing a bipartisan war powers resolution tomorrow to prohibit our involvement. I invite all members of Congress to co-sponsor this resolution." I mean, the idea that we shouldn't go bomb Iran for Israel seems like pretty America first to me, as I've always understood it. And as I've heard Donald Trump defend it. And for the crime of insisting on adherence to what were supposed to be the principles of this movement, he's now being targeted by Trump basically for supporting America first. And instead, Trump is siding with people like Lindsey Graham, who are, at least as I've always understood it and heard it, the very antithesis of America first. I think it says a lot about the Trump administration.
It sure does, and he just endorsed and defended Randy Fine, another Israel firster. Randy Fine saying he didn't wash his hands after shaking the hand of Netanyahu until he could touch the heads of his children. That genocidal maniac, Netanyahu. This is the guy he reveres. He reveres the America last foreign policy that this administration embraces, just like Lindsey Graham, who is the first candidate that Trump is campaigning for. Guess who he's dragging? It's Thomas Massie. This isn't a coincidence. He just tends to not exactly take a liking to the candidates that call him out for abandoning America First principles, the best ones he campaigned on, for the sake of this Israel First Zionist mentality that's pervasive in our government. It's that and the spending that have put the biggest ire of the Washington establishment, as it is now under Trump, yet he is part of the establishment, against Thomas Massie,
Who they regard as their enemies. A few days after bombing Iran, ignoring what Massie said, Trump went to True Social and again escalated his attack on Massie. He said, quote, "Congressman Thomas Massie," no scare quotes this time, "Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky is not MAGA, even though he likes to say he is. Actually, MAGA doesn't even want him, doesn't know him, and doesn't respect him. He is a negative force who almost always votes no. No matter how good something may be, he's a simple-minded grandstander who thinks it's good politics for Iran to have the highest level nuclear weapon while at the same time yelling death to America at every chance they get. Iran has killed and maimed thousands of Americans and even took over the American embassy in Tehran under the Carter administration."
Who killed more Americans, Iran or Israel? The answer is Israel. Check the 1967 USS Liberty attack, by the way. Iran doesn't threaten the United States, not so whatsoever. And yeah, if you want to say Thomas Massie isn't MAGA, that's true because MAGA has become a meme. Because Trump is so Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Argentina, and Ukraine first over America in all of his foreign policy scams. That's the truth. This $40 billion bailout to Argentina now that they're trying to masquerade and market as a currency swap. Yeah, currency swap with a country who can't pay its debts and will default, despite the fact that, we're funding Israel and Ukraine with multitudes of billions of dollars. It's just absurd. And yeah, here's this thing. He's a grandstander again. And oh, wait, but what the problem is with Iran was their chants. Have you heard the chants that they have made, despite not being a threat, despite when being backed into a corner, not killing a single U.S. soldier, despite even tipping the U.S. president off that they weren't going to kill American soldiers. They didn't behave like the neocons said they did, or said they would, and Thomas Massie called that out. He didn't want war. He didn't want unconstitutional strikes, which Trump executed, and much of his supporters just defended wholesale. That's what he called Trump out for. That's why Trump lashed out at him.
We had a spectacular military success yesterday, taking the bomb right out of their hands, and they would use it if they could. But as usual, and despite all the praise and accolades received, this lightweight congressman is against what was so brilliantly achieved last night in Iran. Massie is weak and effective and votes no on virtually everything put before him. He's Rand Paul Jr. No matter how good something may be, MAGA should drop this pathetic loser, Tom Massie, like the plague.
Calling him Rand Paul Jr. is about the best compliment you can get, even though I think Massie's even better than Rand Paul in some respects. Rand Paul is the best senator if you're looking at liberty first policies and actual America first, populism. Same with Massie in the House, but that's a compliment for those of us that actually care about this mentality where you're not supposed to rob American sovereignty for these foreign nations that Trump clearly cares about more than ours. That's what we think. The thinking people, the people that use logic and reason here.
The good news is that we have a wonderful American patriot running against him in the Republican Party, and I'll be out in Kentucky campaigning really hard. MAGA is not about lazy, grandstanding, non-productive politicians, of which Thomas Massie is definitely one. Okay, that was for opposing the bombing of Iran for Israel. In the response, Trump wrote about how Iran took hostages, chant death to America, was getting the bomb, would be used the bomb. These are all talking points right out of the Netanyahu government. And the other thing I just want to say quickly is it was really bizarre for me to watch this. I noticed this, that Thomas Massie used to be pretty popular among conservatives. I said that the other day, and a bunch of the blindest Trump supporters who just changed their views like people change their underwear one day to the next based on what they need to believe to support Trump and cheer Trump and defend Trump, were saying, oh, that's so stupid. Thomas Massie supported Ron DeSantis. It's true. He did support Ron DeSantis. I don't think he likes Trump personally.
He then later endorsed Trump in the election, though. There's plenty of other conservatives that supported Ron DeSantis. I wouldn't have. I think DeSantis was bad. I think Trump's bad too, and it's hard for me to even pick between those two in some circumstances. Both loved red flag laws, both supported COVID regime propaganda that gave governors like Ron DeSantis cover to shut down his state in one of the first lockdowns in the country. Yeah, he opened it up, very well. He had, a conference to, shatter a lot of the COVID regime propaganda, but he did lock down that state as one of the first governors to do that. And that will stand as a precedent. But at the same time, that was a lot of Republicans. It wasn't maybe a majority, but that was a lot of Republicans in this primary.
But the thing is, so many of the people with the greatest power in MAGA also supported Ron DeSantis and not Donald Trump.
Right.
So it's hardly an excuse. I say Thomas Massie is popular among America First because he, on foreign policy, is one of the most vocal America First advocates. It's just that he's fallen out of favor with Trump and his followers, his blindest followers, because Trump deviated from that America First policy while Thomas Massie stayed there.
That's the truth. That's the cold, hard truth, right? It isn't Massie that diverged from America First principles. It was Trump and the Trump administration. We see that every day. Argentina is just the latest thing. Oh, Venezuela, too, flirting with regime change in Venezuela, bankrolling a genocide in Israel, bankrolling and bombing and starting a new war in Iran, contrary to campaign promises, continuing to bankroll Zelensky, continuing to have a starvation blockade in Yemen, continuing to occupy a third of Syria, continuing to have something like 950 soldiers in Iraq. All of these things are America last. Just straight to the line. And Thomas Massie has the nerve and dares to call that out, and Massie's right. That's why he's being viewed as such a villain by this establishment republicanism around the cult of personality of Donald Trump.
June 26th, this was right around the time Trump announced that. The Daily Caller says, exclusive, AIPAC is seeking out challengers to unseat Representative Thomas Massie. So as usual, AIPAC and Trump completely aligned. Politico 5 days later reported on the creation and funding of a new anti-Massie PAC. And here are the people funding it. GOP mega donor Paul Singer. And Paul Singer hated Trump. Paul Singer is the financier of the Washington Beacon. The Washington Beacon is a very neoconservative outlet. They were the first to basically hire Christopher Steele for the Steele dossier. They wanted to destroy Trump. Paul Singer hates Trump, hated Trump. And yet Paul Singer is funding the anti-Massie PAC, not because he's angry that he voted against a big, beautiful bill, but because he's critical of Israel. This is the real power behind it. GOP mega donor Paul Singer was the latest donor to a super PAC seeking to oust Representative Thomas Massie. Last month, according to a filing submitted to the FEC on Thursday, the group, MAGA Kentucky, raised $2 million between its launch in late June and the end of the month. $1 million from Singer, $250,000 from hedge fund manager John Paulson.
This one's my favorite. John Paulson was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein and in Epstein's Black Book. And that's not to say he's necessarily guilty of any crimes associated with Epstein, but that is the truth too. He was an associate of Epstein at the very least. That should at least raise an eyebrow. It's the 1 or 2 or 3 guy with Ro Khanna and Marjorie Taylor Greene and him trying to actually release the Epstein files, actually what the feds are sitting on, while the Trump administration tries to cover it up. Why Mike Johnson, refused to allow a vote on this and tries to whip his allies in the Congress to stand against it, despite, Trump saying, hey, there's nothing there, it's boring, it's a Democratic hoax, but we have to oppose their method while standing with the victims, did Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, to divulge this information.
Who's also a hardcore pro-Israel billionaire. $750,000 from Preserve America PAC, a super PAC tied to Miriam Adelson. Can you believe that Miriam Adelson, who Donald Trump just said, he asked her, do you love Israel more or America more? And she wouldn't answer, has the audacity to name her PAC Preserve America, as if that's actually her agenda? Anyone confused about why Miriam Adelson wants to remove Tom Massie from Congress, given that she's a one-issue person and that issue is Israel? That's what is going on here.
That's exactly what's going on here. That largely is at the crux of this civil war within MAGA. Same thing when it comes to Trump's indignation toward Rand Paul. Despite the fact that both men, Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, stood beside Trump, defended him during the absurdity that was Russiagate, this hoax that said that Trump was colluding with Russia while giving Ukraine weapons, while withdrawing from the INF treaty, while slapping sanctions on Russia and complaining about Russia giving Snowden safe haven, that consumed the mainstream media for 2 to 3 years. Rand Paul and Thomas Massie stood by his side. Guess who didn't? Lindsey Graham. And guess whose advice Trump takes more seriously? Lindsey Graham. Guess who Trump's endorsement is for, within these two groups? It's Lindsey Graham's. It's not Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. That's why you can see this. It's enraging the Israel First crowd and the Israel lobby that these men have gone against the Israel lobby, the AIPAC mechanism to control our foreign policy and abandon America First foreign policy. It's cutting spending too. And it's having serious issues with the taxation regime Trump has laid down, selling it as, taxing foreign countries. That's what you do when you impose tariffs? No, that's taxing Americans for purchasing foreign goods that they view as potentially superior or cheaper. That benefits us immeasurably. It's for these things in tandem. And Israel's a big part of it, but it's not the only part of it that this civil war is going down. That's the truth. I say protect Thomas Massie at all costs. That guy is saying the truth, telling the truth in a city that doesn't know the definition of the term. Same with Rand Paul, I think to a slightly lesser extent. But Thomas Massie, protect that man at all costs. Protect Marjorie Taylor Greene at all costs for doing the same, especially when there are targets on their backs from the right now, from the establishment Republicans under Trump. But I do want to hear what you guys have to say. Do you guys agree with Glenn Greenwald? What's at the center of this civil war within MAGA? Is it right to be called a civil war within MAGA? Has MAGA become a meme because it's so clearly not about America First in this administration? Let me know down below. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Glenn Greenwald too. Glenn is awesome. This is a great segment. I really appreciated it, Glenn, if you're watching this. And if you like this video, please consider becoming a YouTube member by clicking the join button below. If you do that, I will really appreciate it. It means the world to me to support the channel. And to give you a gift in return for that, I'll let you see all of my videos before they go live to the general public on YouTube. Also, if you want a free copy, $0, for total free, click the link in the description below to libertyvault.net. Go to that website, plug in your email. I'll email you a free copy of my first book, Compact of the Republic, The League of States and the Constitution. It's my book that shows how America's decentralized political system got transformed over time into a centralized world empire and why we are still paying the price for that today. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.